Was the Persian Empire a tolerant, multicultural superpower, or a ruthless conquering machine? For centuries, we've been told one story, largely thanks to their enemies, the ancient Greeks. Think of the movie 300, a brave, freedom-loving West against a monstrous, tyrannical East. But what if I told you that's mostly propaganda? Today, we're peeling back the layers of history to uncover the truth. And trust me, it's far more complex and fascinating than a Hollywood blockbuster. Let's start with the man who started it all, Cyrus the Great. When Cyrus conquered Babylon in 539 BC, he didn't burn it to the ground, which was pretty standard procedure back then. Instead, he did something revolutionary. He issued a proclamation, now known as the Cyrus Cylinder, which historians often call the first ever Declaration of Human Rights. It declared freedom for deported peoples, restored their temples, and allowed them to worship their own gods. For the Jewish people held captive in Babylon, this was a miracle. Cyrus let them return to Jerusalem and rebuild their sacred temple. The Bible even calls him a Messiah, a figure anointed by God. This act alone paints a picture of a ruler who valued diversity and respect over brutal subjugation. This policy of tolerance became the cornerstone of the Achaemenid Empire. Cyrus's successors, like Darius the Great, continued this approach. The empire was massive, stretching from modern-day Libya to the Indus Valley, encompassing dozens of different peoples, languages, and religions. How did they manage it? Not just with a powerful army, but with smart administration. Darius divided the empire into provinces called satrapies, each governed by a local or Persian official. He allowed these regions to keep their own customs, laws, and leaders, as long as they paid their taxes and stayed loyal to the king. This was a genius move. It minimized rebellion by giving people a sense of autonomy. Ideas, goods, and people moved freely, creating a vibrant, interconnected world. So, from this perspective, the Persian Empire looks like a forward-thinking civilization that fostered peace and prosperity. But, and this is a big but, let's not get carried away. The Persian Empire was still an empire, and empires are built on conquest. Cyrus, Cambyses, Darius all led military campaigns. They conquered lands, and that process was often violent. The empire's unity was maintained by the very real threat of the Persian army. If a province rebelled, the response was swift and brutal. The Ionian Revolt, where Greek cities in modern-day Turkey rose up against Persian rule, was crushed without mercy. The city of Miletus was sacked, its men killed, and its women and children enslaved. This doesn't exactly fit the narrative of a purely benevolent superpower. And what about those taxes? While the system was efficient, it was still a system of extraction. Wealth flowed from the conquered lands to the Persian heartland, funding the king's lavish lifestyle. His grand building projects, like the magnificent city of Persepolis, and, of course, his massive army. For the common person in a conquered province, life might not have felt so free. They were subjects, not citizens, and their resources were being used to enrich a distant power. This is where the Greek historians, like Herodotus, come in. They wrote the history, and they were the Persians' biggest rivals. To them, the Persian king was a despot, an absolute monarch whose subjects were his slaves. They contrasted this with the Greek ideal of the polis, the city-state, where citizens had a voice in their government. The Greco-Persian Wars were framed as a clash of civilizations. Freedom versus slavery, democracy versus tyranny. The Greeks, for all their talk of freedom, practiced slavery on a massive scale and were notoriously brutal to each other. In contrast, it's widely believed that the Persians who built Persepolis were paid laborers, not slaves. Archaeological evidence like payroll records supports this. Yet, it was an authoritarian state built on military might. The truth is the Persian Empire was a paradox. It was a model of administrative genius and cultural tolerance, but also an expansionist military power. It offered protection and infrastructure, but demanded tribute and loyalty in return. It was far from the monstrous caricature the Greeks painted, but it was also not a utopian paradise. The real story lies in the gray area between these two extremes. They connected the East and West like never before, creating a melting pot of cultures that left a lasting legacy on art, religion, and governance. So, the next time you hear about the Persian Empire, remember it wasn't just a villain in a Greek story. It was a groundbreaking, complicated, and influential power that deserves to be understood on its own terms. What do you think?